Welcome to episode 197 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm the host, Kim Newlove. Dr. Ashley Walker returns to the podcast today to talk about being a pharmacist, an entrepreneur, and an advocate. This episode is available in audio and video format. For the YouTube link, check the description in your podcast player, or you can visit the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Now, for the audio version, look for links to the 6 podcast players that I have listed on thepharmacistvoice.com/podcast. Thepharmacistvoice.com/podcast. If you're new to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, welcome. Again, my name is Kim Newlove, and I'm the host. I'm a pharmacist by training, but I'm not in clinical practice anymore. I made a career transition to voice actor and podcast host. I help clients get their point across in the medical space. Among other things, I narrate audiobooks for women pharmacist authors, provide medical narration to clients in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and continuing medical education industries, and I narrate content for explainer videos and e-learning projects. I was inspired by my nonverbal son, who has autism, to combine my background as a pharmacist with my speaking voice and launch my business, The Pharmacist Voice, in 2017. My son Craig helped me realize the power of having a voice and using it. My solo podcast episodes are about some aspect of being a pharmacist, a voice actor, a pharmacist podcaster, or my career transition from pharmacist to voice actor and podcast host. My interview shows feature a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you are inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 197, and you can find the show notes on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click on the podcast tab and search for episode 197. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Ashley Walker. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, Ashley, or should I say, welcome back. How are you?
I am doing well, and thank you for having me again. I'm excited to be here tonight.
It is my pleasure. This is being broadcast via YouTube and my podcast channel. I have to introduce our helper tonight. We have one of your interpreters who you know. Her name is Kiva. Kiva, would you like to say hi? She's giving a wave for those of you that are listening via the podcast. Excellent. And I know Kiva from attending Ashley's signing classes. Kiva is one of Ashley's, I guess you could say, teachers, fellow teachers, right? Yep. And would you like to say anything about that, Ashley?
Well, actually, Kiva and I met when I was in undergraduate, way back at Rochester Institute of Technology, and we've managed to stay in contact over the years. And whenever I need an interpreter, she's my go-to person because she knows my style very well, and we just mesh very well. Everyone who communicates using sign language, they'll have a style and they'll have an interpreter that's just gifted without effort. And that's people for me.
Awesome. You guys work excellent together when you have your signing classes. And I know you're never in the room when she's teaching us, but she teaches us things that are not on the list. And I love it. Thanks, Kiva.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being here, both Kiva and Ashley. And tonight, what I would like to offer you the opportunity to do is tell your story. Ashley, how did you get into pharmacy? Feel free to start from birth to present.
Okay, so pharmacy school. I guess my love for science really developed when I was in middle school. And, dissecting frogs, I was in art today and creepy stuff, and I just always had a passion for science. So when I got to high school, I took AP Science, and human anatomy and all of that stuff. And I said, okay, I think I want to go into the medical field. And I had an opportunity to shadow different fields. And I found out quickly I could not be an MD. No, I don't do very well with blood. I thought about being an anesthesiologist at one point, but I was like, nah, if they cold on me or if I need surgeries, then all that blood, I'll pass out too. So one of my teachers said, what about pharmacy? I said, the people behind the counter counting pills? That's not a hard job. I didn't even think you had to go to pharmacy school. I thought it was just people off the street working. I really
Okay.
did. So I had an opportunity. My mother worked at a rehab center, and that rehab center had a great relationship with the pharmacy that was independently owned. And the owner allowed me to shadow him for a while. When I tell you, I fell in love because everything was like a puzzle. And that's literally what pharmacy is. You're taking a patient, looking at their disease state and the medication, and trying to put all those pieces together like a puzzle. I thought, okay, I'm going to be a pharmacist. Well, graduating high school, decided to go to RIT. And how did I get to RIT? I closed my eyes, hit the spot on the map.
No, you
It
didn't.
literally did.
Oh my
And my
gosh.
finger landed on New York. So I Googled schools in New York. And I said, RIT. I was thinking it was like MIT. I said, okay, let's just go to RIT. But I had no clue that RIT had the National Technical Institute of Technology for the Deaf. Did not know. Had no clue. I didn't even know they had a deaf program, an interpreter program, nothing. I applied, got a full scholarship, and it wasn't until I moved into the dorm. I was like, everybody else can sign. That's when I realized Tower A is what we called it, was the deaf and hard of hearing dorm. And the RA tended to be interpreting students. But I was in the College of Science, so I was able to live with all the deaf and hard of hearing students. But I would go to school on the other side of campus, where I would see some, but it wasn't as deep as Movement Board was. But I have to tell you, while I was at RIT, it's really where I got my foundation of what were my rights as a deaf student. I never had to ask for an interpreter. I never had to ask for a note taker. If I wanted to go to an event on campus or off campus that was hosted by the university, all I had to do was say, I want to go to this event. And there was always an interpreter. So I never went without. Then, graduating in 2008, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and go to pharmacy school. I took a detour, honestly, because instead of me going straight into pharmacy school, I was afraid because I didn't know anyone else with hearing loss that was a pharmacist. Never met one. Nobody knew of anyone. So I thought, well, there's not many deaf people in the medical field. Who am I to think I can even make it? So I took a detour and I thought I'm just gonna major in biotechnology and work in a lab somewhere. Little did I know that background in biotechnology prepared me for pharmacy school. Instead of me going straight into pharmacy school and applying, I actually took a year off after graduating because my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I have
Mhm.
a twin brother. He was in his final year of college, and I didn't want him to drop out of school to help with mom. So I said, I'll take a leave. And while I was home I said, I'll go ahead and apply for a pharmacy school here. And I did. I applied to University of Louisiana at Monroe and Xavier University of Louisiana. Monroe put me on a waiting list, which is understandable. And then Xavier, the first time, actually denied me.
Oh.
They denied me. And I was very offended by the letter that I received because it was like, you're not focusing on my credentials and all of my completions that I've done. You're focusing on the fact that I'm deaf. No, that's a problem. So I became angry and I said, hell with it. I gave up on becoming a pharmacist. 2 years went by. My brother goes, why don't you go back and try again? Have you lost your mind? No. And he said, well, the sister I know doesn't let anything detour her. So I was like, fine, I'll go ahead and apply again. And I did, but this time I intentionally forgot about it. I was out to lunch with a cousin of mine, and she gives me a call from my mom. My mom tells me, someone from Miss Xavier called, and you need to call them back. I said, okay. So I asked my cousin, can you be my ears? And I'll use my voice. Because I wasn't home and I couldn't use my video phone, and it wasn't mobile at the time yet. So she said, okay. So she was my ears, and the secretary put me on hold. Then she came back to the phone and she said, I'm sorry. I think we called the wrong Ashley. I didn't think anything of it. After all, I do have a common name. So I called my mom back and I said, well, Mom, they said it was a mistake. My mother goes, no, it was not a mistake. I said, what do you mean? Well, you see, my mom, she doesn't answer the phone for numbers she doesn't recognize. And they left a message. And on that voice message, they said my full government name. And I was like, well, clearly they were looking for me. So my mom said, let me call them myself. And she called. And she spoke to the dean of student affairs and explained to him the situation. The dean himself contacted me and he apologized because he didn't know that I was deaf. Because you see, pharmacy schools, they called you back. They did have a callback number for me, which was to my video phone. But because they were not familiar with the video phone, they thought it was a spam call.
Oh.
Right. And he also told me they had never had anyone deaf or hard of hearing apply to pharmacy school. And I said, well, I'm capable of doing it. Would you give me an opportunity? And I said, I'll bring an interpreter with me, just so you can see what it's like. He said, okay. So I got set up for my interview and everything. And I was excited. I had a dear family friend of mine who was my teacher as well. She traveled with me because we lived in the same area. And the very first thing that happened when I walked into the office on the campus was, my name is Ashley Walker, and I'm here for my interview. The secretary looked at me in amazement, and I couldn't figure out why. So when I got into my interview, the first question asked me was, how are you going to communicate with patients if you are deaf? And I said the same way I'm communicating with you now. You see, they had the mentality of if you're deaf, you're dumb. Or if you're deaf, you're mute. And that is the stereotype that's still very much alive today. I guess they were impressed by me. They decided to let me come. It was not all roses for me because they had to make accommodations for me. The first year I stayed on campus. The only thing that I requested was to make sure the room that I stayed in had a strobe light with the doorbell because I can't hear if you knock on the door. But when you would ring the doorbell, a light would flash. So they said, okay, we can do that. And I requested a note taker and an interpreter. That's all I needed. Everything else, easy peasy for me, it was. Well, I was placed in the freshman dorm. 23 years old in the freshman dorm.
That sounds like fun.
Yes.
I'm joking. What was that
What
like?
they did, they put in big bold letters on the door, handicap.
Oh.
Really draw attention to me. And I had many nights where the freshmen would come and ring the doorbell all night and run. And I said,
Not
that's
cool.
it. I am not staying on this campus anymore. But it was a learning experience for the university. I had a team of wonderful interpreters. And just like pharmacy, the interpreting world is very small. Many interpreters are children of deaf adults. And for my two interpreters, I knew their families. One from camp, because I used to go to deaf camp here in Louisiana every year for a week in the summertime. And had no clue. But you find the connection. So I knew for me, that was confirmation that I was on the right path and the right track for what I wanted to do career-wise. The biggest challenge for me in pharmacy school was every semester, without fail, I started the first 2 weeks without an interpreter. I don't know why, but if I had not had the knowledge that I got from RIT of my rights as a deaf person, I probably wouldn't have been a pharmacist today. Being aware of my rights as a deaf individual helped me to get the services that I need, even though people have tried to deny them to me. So really knowing the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 is critical. It really is. And so many people are not aware of their obligation according to ADA. So it was a battle. But nobody likes to say, well, it's the law. You have to follow it one way or other. But it was a learning experience for myself and when I am for the university. And how is it a learning experience for me? When the going gets tough, am I going to chicken out or am I going to face it head on? Well, I've never been one to back down from a challenge. Because even losing my hearing at the age of 4, my parents, my family, they told me, it's up to you. You can either give up or you can push through. But we're going to support you. We're not going to treat you any differently from the brothers, your cousins, anybody else. If they can do it, what's your excuse for not doing it? So what? You can't hear. You're still breathing. You can still write. You can still see. You simply just have to adapt. Find what works best for you and run with it. So that's what I do. I figure out a way to make it work for me and I run with it. And sometimes I have to bump heads along the way, but that's okay. Because I have dreams, I have goals, and I have aspirations that I have accomplished and continue to accomplish. One of the things that was really challenging for me in pharmacy school was For many of us that have a unique ability, there's a program called Vocational Rehabilitation Services that work with people that have unique abilities to help them go to school and get a job. But there are some limitations to it. One of the requirements at that time, I'm sure it's changed now, was you had to either receive Social Security income or Social Security disability. I did receive Social Security income. Pharmacy school, you work as a pharmacist to get your intern hours, right? Outside of pharmacy school. Well, VR vocational rehab was paying for me to go to pharmacy school. And I'm like, well, there's no way my parents can afford this school. There's no way I can afford this school. So I had to find an independent pharmacy that would be willing to work with me, to allow me to get my hours. That in itself was a challenge
Mm-hmm.
because they had never had anyone deaf. And I'm in Louisiana. I'm the only and the first deaf pharmacist in this state. But
Congrats.
I found independent pharmacy owners that was like, okay, we'll give you a shot. Why not? I had to go toe to toe with the board of pharmacy as well. Because my final year of pharmacy school, when we did our rotation, the board informed me that it was up to the preceptors if they wanted to take me with the interpreters or not. And I asked them why. They said, well, the interpreters are not pharmacists. I know that. I said it's the same thing as if I go to the hospital and I'm having a medical emergency and I told you that I'm deaf. You're required by law to contact an interpreter on behalf of me, correct? They said yes. I said when that interpreter comes in, they're not a doctor. They're not. It's the same thing in school. All an interpreter is doing is relaying the information in a way that I can understand it. That's it. They're not changing what you're saying. They're not adding to what you're saying. It's just a means of communication in a way that's accessible for me. Finally, they said, okay, if you can find someone to take you, go ahead. I didn't have any trouble. I had my family rally around me to find some locations, got my degree, and walked out the door. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to land a job. It took me a year and a half to find a job.
Wow. That's a while.
It took a while, but yes. And I can be honest with you, there's always this fear in the back of my mind. I have to keep this job because it might not be easy to get the next job in my field of choice. Because once again, there's not many deaf and hard of hearing. I did eventually meet two other deaf pharmacists, but they were much older than me and lived across the country from me. But they were kind enough to share their experiences with me, and from their perspective, I had it good. I did. Instead, they gave up too easily on getting access to what they needed. But because of my experience at RIC and being aware of what I'm legally obligated to, with that knowledge in mind, I was able to move forward and demand a place at this table. I can't just ask for it meekly. I can't. So I do have to demand a place at this table. And even being a pharmacist, wearing that hat, working in retail, working in hospital, working in long-term care, my eyes were really open to how little the deaf and hard of hearing community is owed. I have worked for hundreds of nursing homes, and not one has a double hard of hearing patient. I actually spoke to an administrator at one of the nursing homes, and I asked, have they ever had a double hard of hearing patient? And they said, no, we don't have the ability to accommodate them. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You're legally required to provide it if they come to you seeking care. And I've always told my husband, just let me die. Don't put me in a nursing home. Because of how my community is left behind, is ignored. They're not even making an effort to supply the accommodations. So how are we any different from someone that's Spanish speaking? Oh, we'll call up an interpreter. Why can't you do that for a deaf and hard of hearing who asks for an interpreter? Some of us don't even speak sign language, but you can still communicate with them. You just have to find out why, and that's the problem. They never take the time to find out how can I best serve you. And as a healthcare provider, that is our priority. The patient's needs first. You prioritize their care, and no two patients are the same. They're not. So you really have to tailor care towards them. And I take this seriously as a pharmacist. When I see deaf patients come in and my colleagues dismiss them, I know they're feeling all too well because it happens to me still to this day, going to the pharmacy. And I hate that I have to pull out my pharmacist card for them to take me seriously. It's sad that I have to do that. And that led me to creating my own business. Really, I was actually laid off from my job right after the pandemic hit. And it took me a good year, maybe a little over a year before I was able to land my next job. And it's kind of crazy because there were ads, broadcastings everywhere. There's a need for pharmacists. There's a need for pharmacists. I'm like, I'm here. I'm here. I'm trying. I'm ready. I'm willing.
Yeah.
And I actually had a district leader tell me, well, we don't know how to accommodate you because you never asked. You never asked. All I need is just give me a phone that I can use. That's it. I can read lips, and I actually do. I'm very independent in my workforce. I read lips well. If I can't understand you, I have no problem saying, hey, can we do this again? I'm struggling with following you. I want to be able to serve you to the best of my ability, but help me do that. By either removing a mask, pulling out the phone, texting with me, whatever. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go the extra mile. If you prefer I keep my mask on and step back, I will do that gladly. You can hear me, I can't hear you. And I think society has gotten away from asking instead they just assume. So with that in mind, I said I don't have the confidence that it'll be easy for me to land a job as a pharmacist because, like I said, individuals with unique abilities are very underrepresented in the medical field. Very underrepresented. So, how to provide access and how to accommodate us is unheard of, really. And we don't have enough people in higher up positions brave enough to step out and say, I'm not going to look at your disability. Instead, I want to see what you have to offer to my team. If you ask me, for me personally, what does someone miss out on when they don't have me as part of their team? Well, I have the ability to pick up on subtle cues most people don't notice. I'm very tuned in to body language and facial expressions because I don't have the ability to hear the tone of voice. So I catch the little things that others don't catch. I can give you a perfect example of this. Um, I was doing rounds with a medical team in the hospital, and the patient had been in a car accident, a very bad car accident. And I kept looking. I can tell the patient was in distress, but their hand movements were very different. And it was hard. It was really hard to notice because they were strapped down from in the stretcher. But then I recognized a sign that was very common, and that sign was fist balled up, slamming help against the side of his leg. So I kept trying to get the attention of the attendant. I said, wait, wait. I think this patient may be deaf or hard of hearing. I don't know. They kept dismissing me. And I was like, I might get in trouble for this. But I pushed the attendant out of the way and I got in the patient's face and I signed, are you deaf? And the patient shook his head. I was trying to tell you, the patient is not a psychotic patient because they assume that the patient was on something. But this patient, I asked him to undo the restraint. He was trying to explain to them, I cannot hear. They were asking him question after question, and he couldn't respond. He also did not have the ability to speak. So I was able to catch that and prevent him from getting unnecessary medication because they seriously thought he was a psychotic patient and he was not. So that is something that I can bring to this team easily.
Yes, so much that you could bring to the team, not just communication wise, but helping people catch on to cues that they would not otherwise have noticed.
Yes. Mm, yes. And everybody is different in their own way. That's why I always encourage, and you know my saying is, deafness should not be viewed as a disability, but rather a unique ability, because each person that has hearing loss, they're unique in their own way. They all have their own superpower. We just need society to be bold enough and willing enough to see what their superpower is. Let us be a part of the team. I mean, we want to apply for a job we didn't feel qualified to do. So if I've proven myself by completing school, completing and passing boards, law exams, what more did you need?
I think some people need to learn to think outside the box. For example, I know you could be a medical writer, but I don't know if that is your dream job. So until someone asks you, what do you want to do? They won't know. So I get to ask you because it's my podcast. What is your dream job, Ashley?
My dream job. You probably think I'm crazy for this. I originally wanted to be a Marine. That was my dream. I come from a family of a Marine. A Marine. My I come from a family of military men and women. Mostly Air Force. But I'm stubborn. I want to take on this tough stuff. And I remember in high school, I did ROTC all through high school.
You did?
I did. Yes. And I had a blast doing that. And I remember my sergeant saying, how are we going to do this? Especially when we had to do drill and all of that. So they taught me the count of the cadence. So that's how I knew what was coming next because I couldn't hear them call out the command. So we did it by count. See, we found a way to adapt. And I remember going down to the Marine office, and I said, I want to be a Marine. And it just so happened the recruiter often would come up to my high school, and he knew me very well. And he said, I understand you want to be a Marine, but because you're deaf, you can't be a Marine. But why? I want to defend my country too. And he said, well, it's not fair for you to be in enemy fire because you won't be able to hear it. I said, but if I see you running, I'm going to run too. I'm not going to just stand there. So even though I couldn't accomplish that dream, I still want to help. So my dream job is really to take care of the men and women who give their lives on a daily basis to protect this country. If I can be on the line with you, at least let me take care of you.
Much respect. That's admirable. Ashley, we have so much in common. Did you know that my dream job was to go into the Navy? Yes.
Really?
I wanted to serve aboard the U.S. Comfort or Mercy. Those are the medical ships. One used to be in the Atlantic Fleet, the other was in the Pacific Fleet. I believe one has been retired. But I was disqualified because I have asthma.
Wow.
Yep. I've talked about it on this podcast before, and I stand by my story. It was one of the greatest professional disappointments of my entire life. I had this idea in my head that I wanted to do this thing, and they wouldn't let me. I went all the way to Washington, D.C. for an interview with the Department of the Navy at the National Naval Medical Center in Washington, D.C. I even
Wow.
in my free time after my interview, I even went to the White House back when you could go right into the East Wing without an appointment. Excuse me, this was back in 2001 before 9/11. It was amazing and I felt like my dream was starting to come true. And then I found out about the disqualification. You got medically disqualified, I feel like, and I got medically disqualified too. And it sucks. I felt like somebody crushed my dreams. But then I found something else to do and it was okay. But because of this podcast, I was able to meet somebody from the Coast Guard Pharmacy. So, a Coast Guard pharmacist who got to serve aboard one of those ships. And I got to hear about her experience. And I felt like it kind of came full circle, this thing that I wanted to do. I finally
Wow.
got to hear about. So I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you got to find out what it would have been like and you could kind of make peace with it. Did you ever have that moment too?
Not quiet, but I've gotten a taste of it. Um, what gives me greatest peace is being able to take my knowledge as a pharmacist and give back to the community. I was like, when nobody else is doing it, I can literally start it. So often I'll go out to the Deaf Action Center located in my hometown and I'll do brown bag review. Go over
Nice.
medication with them in a language that they can understand. But it's it's heartbreaking for me at the same time because I want more. And it shouldn't be a struggle. Access to healthcare should not be a struggle. It almost feels like for anybody with a unique ability, access to and healthcare is a privilege rather than a right. It feels like it's a privilege. And it's like, so I have to earn it? But you shouldn't have to. If you're having an asthma attack and you're going to the hospital, are you gonna struggle because you have no clue what's happening? I've been in that position way too many times as a patient and not knowing what's going on around me. But the most traumatic experience for me as a patient was with the birth of my son. I was already in the hospital with him. And in January, I went into the hospital with him, and he wasn't due until May. And I thought I was just there for an overnight stay. First pregnancy, who knows? And the doctor goes, "Oh no, you're gonna stay here until you have that baby." And I'm like, who wants to stay in the hospital that long? And it was because my cord flow to the baby was on the low side. So they were monitoring that every day, twice a day, with ultrasound, which was fun because I got to see them every time. And I knew by the look. Remember, I'm very visual.
Yes.
I knew by the look on the ultrasound tech's face I was in trouble. Not even 10 minutes later, here comes specialty. And I said, "You gotta take him today, don't you?" And he said, "We do." He said, "How do you know?" Body language gave it away. They started me on a bolus of magnesium sulfate. And for me, it blurred my vision. I already can't hear. And I remember seeing shadows of people walking in the room. And I had to take my hearing aids out because I got so hot and it triggered my vertigo.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I knew if I kept my hearing aids in, I was really gonna get dizzy. So I took them out. And all I remember saying, "Where is my husband? Where is my husband?" He was at home painting the nursery. But as soon as they stopped the medication, my vision came back. And my husband's walking in the room, putting on outfit. I'm like, "What are we doing? Where are you guys taking me?" So my OB stops and he goes, "Wait, you have no clue what's happening." No, the interpreter had not made it there yet. I had no clue they were taking me for surgery, a C-section. I
Wow.
didn't know because they were explaining all of this to me when I couldn't see them. I couldn't read their lips. So the interpreter arrived and the doctor says, "I don't have time to stop." So the interpreter is on the bed, signing to me while the doctor and the nurses are willing me to have this emergency C-section. It was very crucial, and I'm grateful for my doctor. I've been with him since I was a teenager. So we had a very good rapport. I was actually his first deaf patient. And he always would go the extra mile to make sure I understood everything that was going on. But there was one point where the interpreter couldn't be in the room. And they were getting ready to do the spinal block. And everybody had on a mask. My husband couldn't be there, the interpreter couldn't be there, and I was like, "I'm lost." So my doctor saw that I was in distress, and he pulled off his mask. And I remember his partner saying, "You can't do that." And he said, "No, this is the patient who's deaf. She has absolutely no clue what's going on. And the only way I'm gonna be able to get her to calm down so we can do what we need to do is give her a way so she can understand what's happening. And right now, that is by removing my mask." Yes, he broke protocol, but he did it for my sanity and my safety, really. Because apparently you're not supposed to move during a spinal block. So he did that. It's people like that that will go beyond the norm. I know this is not how we're supposed to do this, but I'm going to go the extra step to make sure you're okay. And that's what I want to do as a pharmacist. For anyone that has a unique ability, what is it that you need me to do so that your needs are being met? You can't be a healthcare provider if you're not going to be selfless that way.
Yes, we need to care more about what we do affecting the person on the receiving end than we care about, you know, what it means to us. We need to care more about the patient than we do about ourselves. And that for the doctor to break protocol, he knew he could have gotten in trouble, but he knew that was the right thing for you. And that's important.
Right,
Some
right,
people will look at a problem. There's a problem, right? You have a hard time getting employment because people don't want to make accommodations or whatever the reason is. I look at the problem one way and they look at the problem another way. So maybe they have an open job, a job opening, but they want a certain candidate, right? But they don't say they want a certain candidate. And you look at it as, oh,
right,
this job is open. I can fill this job. And they look at it a different way than you do, and you just can't make it fit together. And that's frustrating because you're perfectly capable. And one of the things that the Ability Center of Northwest Ohio has taught me is that you need to think ability first. Not all people think ability first, especially
right,
employers. And I'm not trying to shame them. It's just how can we help them to think ability first? And I'd love to get your
right.
thoughts on that because I think that your consulting is exactly that, right?
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because if you think about it, I've been told this before. Having hearing loss is the most expensive disability. I've heard that before. And I thought about it. It does make sense because pretty much all of the services that those of us who have hearing loss use is lives. He was the perfect example. She's signing live. So you're on the hook for a cost in real time every time. Versus someone who may be blind. You can take a course or content and put it in the world for them, and that's one time, one and done. But for someone with hearing loss, let's use school for example. It's a challenge in the school system, especially postgraduate, undergraduate, graduate school, whatever. It is a challenge. Even residency programs, fellowships, it's a challenge because you have an interpreter with you at all times so that you have access. I mean, it's a learning period. How else do you expect me to get my education if I don't have access to it? But I'm like, well, the interpreters are too expensive. But you're offering the service to the public. You're legally required to do this. But it almost feels like you're punishing me for having a unique ability. I didn't ask to lose my hearing. I didn't. Nobody asks for any unique ability they have. It just happened. But why punish us for it?
Well said. I completely understand your line of thinking, but even I know you're a fighter because you told me you are. And I have gotten to know you over the course of you teaching me sign language over the past 5 months or so. And what I want to know is your dream job is to serve those who have served us in the military. So, what is your dream job? Is it working at a Veterans Affairs office or what is it? What is your dream job? And what kind of accommodations would have to be made to make it happen?
It doesn't have to be the VA. It can be. I'm. I'm even willing to serve retired police officers, retired firefighters, retired nurses, retired doctors. That is my niche. You take care of me. Let me give it back to you. Let me make sure the medication that you're taking is perfect for you and is not interacting with anything else you have going on. For me, the only thing I need Two things. You to believe in me and my ability, and just give me a phone that I can use, and we're good. And we're good. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less.
Ashley, have you ever met somebody who has the job that you wish that you have with the accommodations that you need?
No, I have not.
No. Have you ever met another pharmacist with hearing loss, complete bilateral hearing loss?
No. I, on my journey over the past year and a half as I've started my business, I have come to discover there are other deaf and hard of hearing currently in pharmacy school or recently just graduated pharmacy school, but I haven't met them in person. But they're reaching out to me more so in terms of how do I navigate this workforce that's not so open to someone like me? How do I land a job? Um, there was one lady in particular who told me she landed a job, but she was afraid to ask for what she needed so that she can do her job to the best of her ability because she was afraid that she would lose that job. And she had been looking for that job for over 2 years. I get it. I totally get it. I didn't have to answer for her to alleviate that fear. Because you win or you lose. Some companies, okay, will provide it for you. Recently I worked for a company, I don't work for them anymore. They knew that I was deaf. And part of their hiring process was, this had never happened to me before, or any job I've ever applied to, was, we need proof that you can't hear. Come again? What? You need proof? Well, if we're gonna provide an interpreter for you during orientation, we need proof that you can't hear. Okay, sure. So I put out my audiogram and I sent it to them. Is this real? It has the doctor's signature on it and it's recent. Well, we want it directly from the doctor's office. Okay. So I called the audiologist and asked them, can you send the same report that you gave me in person to them? Same thing. I had never had that happen before, but I did learn that it's not illegal. It should be, but it's not. I mean, you don't ask a person who wears glasses, I need proof that you can't see.
I
You
can
don't ask
see
a blind person, I need proof that you can't see.
I can see how that would be offensive.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Ashley, what jobs do you think are available for pharmacists who have hearing loss or who are completely deaf?
what what job?
Yeah, and
Certainly,
yeah, what jobs do you think pharmacists can do as deaf pharmacists?
all of them. All of them. I mean, you can work in retail, you can work in hospital, you can work in long-term care. Um, you can work in what is it, compounding, independent, nuclear. There's no limitation, really. Cause I've done retail. I thought it was gonna be challenging, but it's really no different from my everyday life. It's not. Hospital, you don't have much patient interaction. It's more so your colleagues. So there's nothing much there. Long-term care, every now and then you may interact with the patients, but it's no different from retail, just a smaller scale. It's really not any different.
And what accommodations do employers need to make to help pharmacists be successful? Pharmacists who have hearing loss.
I think the general accommodation would be, first of all, we're living post-pandemic, and we still have people walking around with masks. And I get that that's probably here to stay forever. But invest in clear masks so that they're still able to see your lips move when you're speaking. But remember, not everybody can read lips, and that's okay. Clear masks, ask the pharmacist, okay, I know that you're deaf or hard of hearing. What is your preferred method of communication? If we have like a staff meeting or a group meeting, do you prefer one-on-one? What works best for you? For me, if it's a small group setting, I'm fine. But if you want to have a company-wide thing, oh please can we bring in an interpreter? Because there's so much that I can miss in the background.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I understand that you do some consulting. In fact, on LinkedIn, one of your headlines says, I help businesses engage with the deaf community. So that could be helping deaf pharmacists, or it could be helping patients with hearing loss. It could go either way, right?
Yes, I work with both. For patients with hearing loss, I help them to know and learn their rights as a patient and how to advocate for themselves to get the appropriate services they need. And for healthcare providers, business owners, anybody else who offers services, products, or business, I give them the tools and the resources they need so they can engage with the deaf and hard of hearing community. And how I do that is I do an analysis of what is the bulk of their population. Are they deaf, hard of hearing? Do they communicate using primarily sign language? Or do they prefer to lip read? What do you see on a daily basis? And I help connect them with the resources that they can implement in their services to meet those needs better.
Excellent. And if somebody listening to this wants to hire you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way they can contact me is they can send me an email, or if they're on LinkedIn, they can find me on LinkedIn. My email is info at drashley.walker.com.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, Ashley, there was a couple of things that you mentioned earlier that I want to go back to and ask you about. One of those things is you mentioned that people with hearing loss or deaf people have certain unique abilities. We already know that you're able to read lips, you're able to speak, you can pick up on body language. Can you tell me about some other unique abilities?
My other unique ability, persistence. I don't give up. I find a way. You tell me no, I'm gonna find a way to get you to tone that no and say yes. Because there is a way. I don't let people give up so easily. And I'm also your biggest cheerleader. If you want something bad enough, but you feel so discouraged about it, you probably get tired of me. I'll be that person. Okay, what's next? What have you tried? I help you brainstorm. I'm not afraid to push you. I know just how far to push you, and I'm willing to get in the trenches with you. Because I know what it's like to struggle, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I would. And it helps when you have somebody in your corner. I've learned growing up, so many of my friends who are deaf and hard of hearing didn't have the support system I had. They didn't. So I have no problem. What do you need? How can I help you? Kind of makes sense why I'm in the medical field now. How can I help you?
I appreciate your passion for serving and helping others, and I really love your personality. I am the mother of a child with autism. He's an adult child, but I am a fighter too, and I've constantly had to think ability first to
Yes.
help him. And okay, something else I want to follow up on is you said that you've been approached by other students in pharmacy school, okay? And they ask you questions, right? Can you tell me a little bit about what they ask you and maybe how you've helped them?
Pharmacy students, are you talking about the deaf and hard of hearing students or just general students?
I would say the deaf and hard of hearing students who are following in your footsteps and they ask you questions. What do they ask and how do you help them?
Most of them, they're getting ready to enter into their final year when they do rotation, or they're getting ready to graduate. For those who are entering into rotation, they'll ask, how did you do it? Did you get an interpreter? Did you have a hard time getting an interpreter? How do you do rounds with a team of people? It's tricky, but it's doable. I mean, it's like trying to write while you're walking. Try watching an interpreter while you're walking. Yes, it can be a little bit challenging, but I figured out a method. It also helps meet with your preceptors, get familiar with each other, let them know what you need so that you can be successful. You have to advocate for yourself. Only you know what works best for you. You can't expect the preceptor or the boss to know how to accommodate you. And if they're not willing to accommodate you, maybe that's not the place for you. Or maybe they just don't know how. So be willing to share their knowledge because I've learned, even in pharmacy school myself, nobody talks about ADA. Nobody talks about how to serve communities with unique abilities. So you're really first seeing it out in the field. So you want to be compassionate and have grace. Well, maybe they just don't know. So share what you know. And if they're still resistant, it's up to you to decide if you want to cut their losses or keep pushing. And for me, I'm stubborn. I keep pushing because it's 2023. We gotta do better. We have to do better. For those who are seeking a job, I've thought about it all kind of ways. I've got to the point where I don't even mention that I'm deaf. Anyway, my implication. But then I thought about it. I can't hide it anyway because you have to leave a callback number. And you're going to call me on my video phone. So I got to the point, the message on my video phone, I actually set it up to say, hi, you have reached the sign box of Dr. Ashley R. Walker. You have reached the correct person. Please understand that I am deaf, and I use this phone so that I can communicate effectively with you. Go ahead and leave a message and I'll return your call. I've got to the point where I do that. So don't be afraid, or even sometimes I make personal trips. Instead of submitting my application online, I will print it out and go to HR and turn them in person because I want them to see me for me, see what I'm capable of doing, and not get stuck on, well, this is the phone system I'm not familiar with. Maybe they gave us a fake number. Click. I can't tell you how many interviews I have missed out on because of that. But it's all about bringing awareness, which is why I keep pushing. And then the job applicants is so they took the human part out of it. You know what I mean? You have to go through this program and it kind of weeds out, so they never really get to know you.
Yes, and that's unfortunate. I hope that this podcast episode raises awareness about the unique abilities of people with hearing loss because, like you said, you've got lots of abilities.
Yes. And I also, this is 2023, I am launching the beginner sign language course because I've had several pharmacists reach out to me and say, hey, over the counter hearing aids are out. Why is so many deaf and hard of hearing people coming to our pharmacy, and a lot of them is communicating using sign language, and we have no clue.
Yes.
I'm willing to teach you, and it's crazy because I told them, you have a pharmacist in your back pocket who is deaf. You have somebody that's in the trenches with you that's willing to help you navigate. I'm right here. There's no question too dumb. I am a complete open book. If I don't know the answer, I will help you find the answer. I don't know everything about hearing loss because hearing loss varies across the board. And everybody's needs are different. But I know enough. I have over 30 years of experience as I've been deaf since the age of 4. So,
Well, thank you for all that advice for us, the hearing community, for us to learn about you and your abilities. And I love that you stuck in something for pharmacy students because you may have been the first that you know of, but you won't be the last.
I will not. I
That's
will
right.
not.
All right. Well, as we wrap this up, I think this episode's going to come out on January 31st or January I'm trying to think. January 27th, my mistake. This episode will come out on January 27th. Do you have anything coming up that you would like to talk about? You mentioned your signing class. Would you like to talk about that?
The not the 27th, but the official start date of this class, the beginner's course in American Sign Language taught by me, starts on January 25th, and it will last for 6 weeks. It's going to be fun, I promise you, because not only am I just teaching you the language, I'm exposing you to the culture. I'm exposing you to different types of hearing loss so you can see it. You get to see the difference between a cochlear implant, hearing aid, deaf people who have gone to a deaf institution where the teachers sign everybody there is deaf or hard of hearing. And people like me who mainstream. You had the deaf and hard of hearing program in the midst of the general population, but you were still sent to regular classrooms with an interpreter or whatever type of assistive resources that you need, whether it was hardtail, whether it was type, or an interpreter. You will get to see that I want you exposed because the only way you're going to understand the community is you have to immerse into it.
Very exciting. This probably will not be the last time that you teach this class, too. This is just the first, right?
Right. It is. It's just the first one.
How can your listeners that are listening or watching now learn about future offerings for sign language that you teach?
That if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm mostly on LinkedIn. I post all the time. I also have a group on LinkedIn that I just recently got back going, where I will be dropping in little tidbits about how to engage with the deaf and hard of hearing community. That would be a good resource for you. Then, anytime I have events, you will see them posted, and you will have the ability to click on it, whether you want to join it or be on the waiting list for the next course or the next event.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I would like to definitely follow all of that. Post such amazing messages on LinkedIn. There are some messages that really resonate. For example, recently you posted about how basically if you've met one person who has hearing loss, you've met one person who has hearing loss. You're all different. Everybody's got a
Right,
different story. Like you just
right,
said, your formal education might be with a deaf only school or mainstreamed. You might have a
right,
cochlear implant or no hearing aids. There may be
right,
so many
right,
different types. And I didn't even think about that. But as a parent of a child with autism, I know that if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism.
right.
They're all different too. So that really resonated with me. And I look forward to seeing your future posts because I always learn something. And you post such beautiful pictures too. I mean, sometimes your kids are in them, or you're in a work setting, you're in scrubs or in your car. You never know where you're going to see Ashley. So you might as well just watch just to see where she pops up. That's fun. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, as we close this podcast episode where I've learned so much, would you like to share anything else?
I try to show myself in different studies, and I do that purposely because so many people say, well, if you're deaf, you can't have a family. If you're deaf, you can't drive. If you're deaf, you can't walk. Well, I'm doing all of that. So I'm intentional in the photos that I take because I'm showing there's nothing we cannot do. You give me something, I'm just gonna figure out how to do it. Why not? I don't know if it's the science in me. You know, we're thinkers. We try to figure things out. Or if it's just my personality. I want a place at this table. If you're not gonna give it to me, I'm gonna take it one way or the other.
The way I would say that is you're pulling your chair up to the table.
Ooh, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you deserve to be at the table and my life is richer for knowing you. I am very glad that we met and I hope you'll come back on my podcast again someday.
Yes. I would love to come back. I always have a ball with you, Kim.
I know we connect on so many different levels. I have a sincere desire to learn sign, but we're also moms. In fact, when we were planning this podcast, I was telling her about how hectic my life is around the holidays. And you have the same deal going on because you have one that's in school, or do you have two in school now?
I have two in school and one at home.
Yes. So you know what it's like to be excited about sending the kids back to school.
Yes. I
Yes.
told my husband this week, I said, ooh, we have more food in the house this week. Because when the kids are home, it's like we're going to the store every other day. And I'm like, y'all need to go back to school.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed becoming your friend. And you are welcome to come back to my podcast, hopefully sooner than later. And I think that does it for this episode of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Thanks again for being here, Ashley. And thank you very much to our interpreter, Kiva. You did an excellent job. We'll invite you back next time, too. All right. Thanks again, ladies. Take care.
I wanted to say you're welcome, but I didn't want to cut off the last part of what you said. So, yes, you're very welcome. And thank you for asking me to provide services.
Just a few comments as I wrap up this episode. First of all, I'm really looking forward to American Sign Language class with Ashley. I'll talk about how it's going in my winter update, which comes out February 17th. Second, I want to say that Ashley thinks ability first in everything that she does. So I encourage you to think ability first too. If there's something Ashley wants to do, she makes it happen. I want to encourage you to have that attitude as well. And finally, I want to wrap up this episode with one last comment. Today, you learned that Dr. Ashley Walker uses her voice as a pharmacist, an entrepreneur, an advocate, wife, mom, and volunteer. I hope that she has inspired you to use your voice too. Thank you for listening to episode 197 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. In the show notes today, you will find links to Dr. Ashley Walker on LinkedIn, her email address and bio, the YouTube link for today's interview in case you're listening to this on a podcast player. You'll find a link to our interview from August of 2022, about 6 months ago. That was episode 173 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. And there's lots more links there, so check those out too. If you know someone who would like this episode or needs to hear it, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. I'll be back next Friday, February 3rd, with a solo show. It's one of my drug name pronunciation episodes. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you next week.